Hello YouTube, this is Crosscheck and welcome to Getting Started with DCS World. In the video description you will find timestamps to the different topics that will be discussed here so you can easily access the information that interests you. Okay, let's start by understanding what DCS World is. DCS World is a very impressive combat flight simulator developed by Eagle Dynamics, a software company based in Moscow, Russia. Needless to say, these are really good news as Russians do know how to make great simulators. Of course, not everything is sunshine and happiness. If you want to learn more regarding the history of DCS and listen to some serious rambling, you should go and check out my video called DCS A Beautiful Mess. A link is in the video's description. I would like to point out that I am very critical regarding DCS because I truly love this simulator. If you ask me what simulator brings, in this point of time, the most joy out of me, I would say DCS in a heartbeat. DCS is that good. But it also makes me the angriest, so do with that information what you will. Moving on, DCS self-proclaims to be free-to-play, but I personally think it is a bit deceiving. The base package, which is free to download, can be seen as a extremely limited free-to-play software or like a really generous demo of it. I prefer the latter. But at the making of this video, because of the current situation, Eagle Dynamics has posted that DCS World will be truly free-to-play for a full month. A brilliant move in my humble opinion. The post has conflicting information on when it begins and when it ends, but in worst case scenario it seems to be available from the 19th of April all the way to the 18th of May. This of course in 2020, in case you are watching sometime in the future. In this time frame you will enjoy unlimited access to all DCS aircraft maps and assets for, you guessed it, completely free. Also, it is worth mentioning, if you truly enjoy something during this period, you will be able to keep it with a 50% discount off from the original price. So this month is the perfect time to give DCS a try if you have been in the fence or if you have any amount of curiosity. Military aircraft are absolutely awesome, needless to say. Or if the free month is over but you are still interested in diving into DCS, this video is still going to be of great value for you. Alright, let's move on and dive into the requirements. This software is Windows only. At least you should have Windows 7, a Intel Core i3 at 2.8 GHz or a AMD FX processor. 8 GB of RAM, 16 if you are looking for doing intense missions. I would say at least 100 gigs of hard disk space, a GTX 760 or a AMD R9 280X video card, and of course a internet connection. The recommended specs are as follows: Windows 10, Core i5 at 3 GHz or a AMD Ryzen processor, 16 gigs of RAM, 32 if you want to go into heavy missions, a solid state drive with at least 120 gigs of free space, a GTX 1070 or AMD Radeon RX Vega 56 with at least 8 gigs of VRAM, a HOTAS, a head tracking device, and of course an internet connection. If you are planning on going VR on DCS, you should at least have a GTX 1080 or a AMD Radeon RX Vega 64 video card. As you may have noticed in the recommended specs, I mentioned two things that normally you don't find in the system requirements. These are the HOTAS, also known as hands-on throttle and stick, and a head tracking device. As you may have already guessed, it is not required to have all these things to play the simulator and to, up to some extent, enjoy it. But most definitely, they are extremely recommended. They truly make a difference. Let's talk about the HOTAS first. As you may or may not know, fighter aircraft are controlled with a throttle and a stick. The pilot can complete many tasks without taking his hands off these controls. This is possible because of the many buttons available in these controls. And trust me, you will need all the buttons you can get. Modern military aircraft require many different inputs from the operator to be able to operate to the fullest of its capabilities. So not having a HOTAS system will give you a serious disadvantage, and will require you to get very creative with how you will operate the aircraft and its many different functions. You may end up requiring to jump over to your keyboard and memorizing various different keybinds if you own a simple joystick, yoke or controller. Or if you don't own any, even takeoffs and landings can prove to be incredibly challenging. I don't even wish to imagine air-to-air refueling. I do not mean to discourage anybody, but it is good to realize from the beginning the handicap you will be facing if you do not own a proper HOTAS system. If you do not own a HOTAS system, but would like a recommendation on an affordable one for DCS, I would most definitely recommend the Thrustmaster T16000M HOTAS system. If possible, the one which includes the routers in the package. You may still require to add a modifier button to give extra functions to the rest of the buttons in the HOTAS, but it is very manageable. I am currently using this HOTAS. Now let's talk about the other hardware recommendation for DCS, the head tracking. Like many other games, DCS requires you to look around in order to be effective. Normally this is done via the mouse, but unlike many other games, in DCS the mouse is used to click all of the little pretty buttons inside your cockpit, not really used to move your head around. It is still possible, but not recommended. Without a head tracking solution, one of the best options you get is to utilize a head switch on your HOTAS to move your view around. And this can be enough for basic operations, but once you start getting into air fights, complicated approaches or air-to-air refueling, you will start to feel quite limited. And let's be honest, the head switch is better used for something like controlling the trim of your aircraft, not your view. So why not use the same equipment you use every day to look around? Yes, your head or neck. There are basically two routes on head tracking, a infrared head tracker or a VR. Let's first discuss the infrared head trackers. The most popular infrared head tracking hardware is TrackIR by Natural Point. It will track head motions within up to 6 degrees of freedom. You will still be using your monitor with this hardware, but will be mounting a sensor probably over this monitor and will clip some reflectors or IR LEDs depending on the kit that you acquired to a baseball cap or into the frame of your headphones. The setup is quite straightforward, and you can configure the sensitivity of your movements via curves, as the amount of movements of your head translates into the desired movement in the virtual world. You want your eyes to be able to look into the monitor the entire time, so your head movements will be subtle, but the movements in the simulator will be quite more dramatic. It actually is quite easy to get used to after a couple of hours of use, and oh man, it really improves immersion and your performance as a virtual pilot. That being said, TrackIR is not exactly cheap. It is worth mentioning that there are cheaper options out there and even DIY options, but I cannot recommend them as I only have experience with TrackIR. Actually, this in the background is some footage of me flying with TrackIR. There are some cons, of course. The build quality does not reflect the price of the unit, speaking about TrackIR. Also, other light sources may cause issues with the tracking, and there is certain drift on the tracking, so you are going to have to recenter quite often. But this can be configured to be reset with a single click of a button of your choosing, so it's okay. That is pretty much all I can complain about. But in this point in time, if you have a VR capable computer, I would even dare to suggest that you don't bother with TrackIR and jump straight into VR. For what it delivers, the value is just so much higher in a VR than in TrackIR. And something like the Oculus Rift S is not very far away from the price tag of the TrackIR. And holy cow, it is so much better. So now that we mentioned VR, let's dive into this option. In my experience, VR is simply the best way to experience DCS, hands down. The immersion is just incredible. You feel like you are actually inside your favorite fighter aircraft. Keeping track of everything that is going on around you just feels natural. You are in a fighter aircraft after all. Things are happening extremely fast around you. And this is the best way to keep up with everything. Takeoffs, landings, flying in formation, air-to-air refueling, landing in the carrier. All these things are just so much easier to accomplish. The fact that you can actually see the depth of the objects and world around you give you a better sense of your presence, your speed, your size, your altitude. It is a game changer. I need to repeat myself now. It is just amazing. The cheapest headset I would recommend as a VR option for DCS right now would have to be the Oculus Rift S. It is extremely practical, and the resolution is currently in a sweet spot where the cockpits are readable. maybe sometimes do require a bit of zoom to read without eye strain, and the performance is good. As you know, the higher the resolution, the better the readability will be, but the worse performance you will get. Best of this headset is the value. As of now, it really can't be compared against anything else in the value department. Great quality, very comfortable, quite affordable. And the touch controls are pretty darn great, so if you want to play other VR games, this VR kit will not let you down. So this is a no-brainer, right? VR is the way DCS should be experienced. Well, not exactly. As always, not everything is perfect. Speaking about the Oculus Rift S, the audio solution is just awful, but I fixed it with a cheap pair of COS Porta Pro headphones. They are light, comfortable, sound great, and easy to permanently mount into the headset. With a couple of zip ties, of course. But the worst thing about the Oculus Rift S is that Oculus, the company, is owned by Facebook. And as we all can agree, Facebook is absolute garbage. Amazing that they can do such amazing VR headsets. Now, speaking about the cons of VR in DCS, DCS is not exactly the most optimized piece of software for VR. Even if you have a beast of a machine, you can expect to have performance issues now and then. I personally had to tweak so much in DCS and in my computer to get an acceptable performance, and even after trying to optimize everything that was optimizable, the performance in DCS multiplayer servers is pretty bad. You can get used to it for sure, but dang, it really bums me out. And VR in general has also a couple of cons. When you are inside the virtual world, well, you are kind of outside the real world. If you plan on using your keyboard and grab something in your desk, this task can be interesting. You need to rethink how you play DCS to make it work in VR. Settings must be changed, the physical layout around you must be reconsidered. I personally think all of this is worth it, but it is not as simple as, okay, you buy it, you plug it in, and you just enjoy. It does require some planning, some work. If you are going for the VR route, be sure to check out the video on this video's description regarding VR optimization for DCS. Okay, so my biggest problem with VR was, because it's not a problem anymore, that I would get motion sickness very, very fast and very, very hard. How hard, you may ask? Like not being able to get up from bed for hours bad and feeling sick for the next 24 hours. And all of this pain and suffering just because I did a left turn while taxiing an aircraft. It was absolutely pathetic. I had to train for VR for an entire month to be able to fly comfortably. I started with 15-minute sessions a day of really slow turns while taxiing and flying, no rolls, no loops, no fast head movements, and as soon as I would start feeling the tiniest sick, I would stop. But every single day I was exercising my VR legs. I really thought I was not going to be able to enjoy flying in VR and would have to end up selling my VR headset. But every day I was being able to last a bit longer in VR, to do turns a little faster, to move my head around a bit more. Fast forward a couple of months and I can dogfight for hours with no issue. So if you experience motion sickness in VR, do know you can get rid of it. It will require time and dedication, but you can fully get rid of it. Just follow these 2 steps. Number 1, do VR every day possible. You can start with 5-minute sessions if you want, and do your best to increase the time in VR each day, and increase the activities in VR each day, little by little. Number 2, if you start feeling the slightest sick, stop. Just stop. Have a cold glass of water, take a sit, do some other tasks, and when you feel completely normal, jump back in. And those are pretty much all of the issues I have encountered with VR in general and with DCS. But for me, at the end of the day, VR has been absolutely worth it. I actually cannot go back to a flat screen anymore. It's just that good. Okay, so by now we know what DCS is, what we can expect from it, what are the minimum and recommended requirements. If you truly need a HOTAS or a head tracking system, now you are ready to start your adventures in DCS. What aircraft should you start with? It is important to first understand there are 2 types of aircraft: the simple model aircraft and the full fidelity aircraft. The main difference between these 2 aircrafts are, number 1, the depth in the simulation of the systems and the flight model, and number 2, the clickable cockpits. It is quite easy to see if an aircraft is full fidelity or not. Just head over to the module store and throw the module you want into the shopping cart. Visit your shopping cart and proceed to inspect the total to be paid. At this moment, pull out your wallet. If you can hear your wallet complaining about some discomfort or pain in the arm or shoulder area, that means your wallet is having a heart attack. This confirms that this module is indeed full fidelity. You now should probably consider calling an ambulance. So now, where should you begin? Should you start with a simple module or a full fidelity one? There are 3 schools of thought regarding where to start. The first one is, buy the aircraft you like the most. Any aircraft you choose will require a great level of dedication for you to become proficient on it. So it is best to start with something you are really interested in, as the interest will be the force that will power through the steep learning curve. This is a very romantic and beautiful school of thought, and it makes perfect sense. But it didn't work out for me. I bought the aircraft I liked the most, and it did not meet my expectations. Then I bought the second aircraft I liked the most, and I ended up with a broken aircraft which I had to wait years for it to be enjoyable but still not complete. So I definitely do not recommend this school of thought. The second school of thought is, start with a simple model aircraft. They are cheap and the systems are much simpler. So in theory, it is much easier to get the hang of. And you can avoid giving your wallet a heart attack. All of this while you see if DCS is right for you. Again, it makes perfect sense on paper. But this didn't work out for me, neither. The first module I bought was the F-15, which is a simple model aircraft. There is another F-15 coming that will be full fidelity, but at the time being, the only F-15 available is simple model. I bought it because who doesn't love the F-15? And as mentioned, it turned out to be a simple model aircraft. Sounds like I knocked 2 birds with 1 stone here. I get a cheap, simple aircraft, which happens to be my favorite aircraft. And well, as mentioned before, my expectations were not met. I came from flying PMDG aircraft in FSX, so clickable cockpits were the way to roll for me. And also, I find much easier to memorize what a labeled switch or button I am looking at does than memorizing what a bizarre keybind in my keyboard or HOTAS does. I like my HOTAS to have the same functions the real aircraft HOTAS has. Other than that, I want as less things to bind or to remember keybinds. I don't want a keybind to close my canopy. I just want to press the button in my cockpit that says close canopy. I don't want to have a keybind for my external lights. I want to rotate the external light knob inside my cockpit. Yes, full fidelity aircraft have more procedures that you need to learn, but in my opinion, these procedures are easier to do by creating a flow inside the cockpit that makes sense and is correctly labeled. So the second school of thought is a no for me, and we end up with the third one. Get a full fidelity module that is not riddled in bugs, that the features you desire from it are complete, and that matches the level of complexity or simplicity that you desire. And go for a multi-role aircraft. This way you can experience more type of missions and are not limited to a particular role. You may end up enjoying more a role you thought you were not going to pursue. Following this school of thought, I would recommend 3 aircraft, each for a different type of person. My first recommendation would be the F-16 Viper. If you are a regular on this channel, it may come as a surprise that I recommend this aircraft, given that I have given him such a hard time for the absolutely pathetic state it was launched in. Currently, it is in early access, it shouldn't cost more than $20 early access. It's pretty early, but this actually can be a good thing for someone completely new to the simulator, because there are not so many systems to learn. Obviously, this means it is quite limited at the moment. It also looks absolutely stunning, and it is a joy to fly. This module I have recommended to friends of mine that are new to DCS and are, slow learners. And they are loving it. Absolutely loving it. I don't think there would have been a better aircraft to suit them. It is very capable, very sexy, and very easy to jump into. So if you are worried about being overloaded with information, or as in my friend's case, a little slow, or you just want to start nice and simple, this aircraft is, in my opinion, your best bet. Now let's jump into my second recommendation. The second aircraft I would recommend is the VIII Hornet. If you are into carrier operations, well, this is the aircraft to get. It is in a much better state regarding completed features than the F-16, so there is much more to learn. Landing in the carrier also requires more skill, so if you want a challenge, this is also something this module provides. The systems are quite intuitive and easy to understand. As mentioned, more features are complete in this module. So much more interesting ordnance at your disposal. If you're interested in utilizing many different ordnance and dominating each one, this model is a much better fit than the F-16. But also, as the F-16, this is still an early access module. So there are many things missing and many things are not working as intended. There will be a point where you will hit the early access wall and we'll have to start waiting for new features to be released little by little. But being honest, if you are new, the wall is pretty darn far away. You will be learning and mastering this module for a long time. Okay, let's now talk about the third and last of my recommendations. And this is the one I would have chosen if I was starting in DCS myself, the JF-17, aka the Jeff. This is a weird one, especially if you dive into its politics, which I will not do because they bear no importance in the experience that this module offers inside DCS. This is the newest module in the DCS family. This is the first DCS module created by their developers, the Deca Ironworks team. It is the most modern aircraft in DCS, and their launch was the most impressive launch in DCS I have ever witnessed. This was an unknown developer team developing an aircraft I didn't even know it existed, launched their module in DCS with little to no advertisement. Needless to say, I was extremely skeptical of the module, but having a flight simulation YouTube channel, I said, hey, what the hell, let's just try it out. I mean, this is kind of what I do. And oh my god, the state the module is in, I don't think the F-18 will achieve in 2 years' time, or the F-16 in about 7 years. The thing was 90% complete on launch, something you really don't see anymore. The aircraft is actually quite beautiful. I even like it better than the F-16. I am not saying the design is better. I am just saying I like more how the Jeff looks. It flies really good. It is a small airframe, so if you load her up real heavy, well, you are going to notice it. Let's just say that. But it is a fantastic little aircraft. It being the most modern in DCS, it sports the biggest and best screens in the cockpit. The systems are quite simple and intuitive. I just can't overstate what a good little aircraft this is. Oh, and the ordnance. It packs quite an amazing ordnance. I won't get into detail, but trust me, it has amazing ordnance. It really can gear up for any occasion. So it is a multi-role aircraft, but it is a small aircraft. So it can't do many things at once, but it can do one thing extremely well on each sortie, and it can drastically change gear for the next sortie to fulfill a completely different role. It truly can do it all, just not at the same time. So who is this aircraft for? Well, this aircraft is for people who want the most modern aircraft. People who don't want to be hitting a early access wall. People who want pretty much all the features available in every system they dive into. No weird surprises where you realize that the issue you were encountering is just an incomplete feature or a lacking feature. Also for people who like to kick serious butt in the underdog. It is the underdog not because it is not capable, which it most definitely is. It is the underdog because most people don't understand what a brilliant little machine this is. Of course, nothing is perfect. It does have its couple of issues. Setting out the radios is a pain in the ass. You can get used to it, but it's pretty annoying. Also, if you want data link, you must sacrifice a radio, which if you are new to DCS, it's really not a problem. Other annoyance is the air-to-air refueling probe. It can be removed in the ground, but if you take it with you, do know it is static. Does not fall down or anything fancy of the sorts, and it is placed in a position where it blocks visibility quite a bit. Lastly, in this aircraft is where I personally get the worst performance in VR. It is still manageable, but I am hoping for better optimization on this aircraft soon, hopefully. What I'm trying to say here is, this is my favorite module in DCS, and I think it is a brilliant module for the beginner that checks the marks I previously mentioned. This is not a hard module. This is actually quite easy to learn. It's just that there is a lot to learn. So that is it for my recommendations. Any of these 3 aircraft are amazing for beginners. In summary, F-16 is great for people who just know they learn in a slow pace, or just people who don't want to be overwhelmed, they just want to keep it simple. Because let's be honest, not everybody wants to punish themselves. The F-18 is for the ones interested in naval operations and a very capable, challenging and fun aircraft. The JF-17 is for the ones interested in the most modern aircraft. Big punch in a small package, amazing ordnance to play with, and an aircraft developed by a truly amazing team that does not stop to amaze. Not only they threw an amazing release, but the updates, sense of humor, and their care for the clients has been nothing short of fantastic. Okay, so by now you should be able to choose an aircraft. Does not have to be one of my recommendations, of course, but you should be able to better have an idea on what to look for an aircraft to buy. After you buy it, it is time to learn the aircraft, and oh boy, where to start? Before you do anything, it is very important to map the required keybinds for your aircraft in your controller, preferably on your HOTAS. Do know each aircraft is very different, and each aircraft requires its own keybinds. You may be lucky and be able to find a profile for the aircraft you have for your controller online. If so, you just need to download the file, save it somewhere you can navigate into, and inside the DCS controls menu, load that profile in the corresponding column. And voila! If the profile utilizes a modifier, you will have to set it manually. If you are not so lucky, you will have to create the keybinds yourself. If your controller has less buttons than what you wish to configure, remember you can set a button as a modifier. This will create an extra layer of virtual buttons. So basically, each physical button you have will have 2 functions, the normal ones and the ones when the modifier button is held pressed. You can, if you wish, set the modifier as a switch instead of a button, but I am a button type of guy myself. So okay, where do we start? The easiest way to start this process is to go ahead and download the module's official manual and also the module's Chuck's guide. It's quite easy, Google is your friend here. If Chuck's guide is available for the selected module, I prefer starting with it. Chuck's guides are guides created by a gentleman called Chuck, and he is out there doing God's work just for the love of it. So throw a coin at him if you find those guides useful. So open the guide or manual and locate the HOTAS page. This will show you the aircraft real HOTAS setup. It is in your best interest to bind all of the buttons present in the real-life HOTAS to your controller, as many of the most important controls are located here. Chuck's guides go the extra mile and give you a recommendation of the keybinds you should have. After setting these ones up, the rest of the keybinds I may want to have in my controller, I will be adding them as the need for them arises. So expect to bind some more stuff later on, as you start to understand your module and start developing a aircraft workflow. Just as a heads up, when setting up the controls, make sure you are setting them up in the correct aircraft. If you want to set up an axis, click on the axis assign button. You can also tune the axis as to have the desired sensitivity curve and dead zone in case you require one. Be sure to save your profiles when finished and upload them into the cloud, so in case something happens, you don't have to repeat all of this process again. After all of this, you can continue and actually start learning the module however you want. If tutorials in DCS are available, you can try them out. You can also search for YouTube videos on your aircraft, there are plenty out there. You could also go with the Grim Reapers for individual classes. They will read you Chuck's guides for about $20 the hour. It is an amazing deal. I am joking, of course, please don't throw your money away like that. Or if you really want to throw it away, feel free to throw it in the direction of my Patreon. Wink wink. Or Chuck's. But yeah, I wouldn't recommend even the tutorials from the Grim Reapers. There are some good ones, but I think there are more really crappy ones than good ones. So try to stick to someone like Red Kite. He is absolutely brilliant. Anyway, the most effective way to learn an aircraft, in my humble opinion, of course, is to start with Chuck's guides. They are extremely simple, it's mostly pretty pictures, only the necessary text. You can be inside the aircraft training while you go through this guide. Of course, this is not possible in VR, so leave VR aside for now. After I finish with Chuck's guide, I like to understand a little deeper the aircraft, so I bring the official module manual to bed with me and give it a good read every night until I fall asleep. It's actually pretty nice and romantic. And if I want to quickly refresh something up, I find Chuck's guides to be the most effective way to find exactly what I'm looking for and freshen it up. And that is pretty much it. You gotta power through this process. Read, watch, ask, test as much as you can. It is a pretty rewarding experience. Okay, so now you feel you're ready to take your new knowledge to the skies. There are two ways to do this: single player or multiplayer. Single player is the best place to make mistakes and to get the best performance out of the simulator. So it may be a good idea to start here. Some aircraft come with some quick missions that can help you get the hang of different systems in your aircraft. The module may also include a campaign you can enjoy, or you may also be able to buy campaigns for your module. Just make sure to check that the campaign is working correctly with your current DCS version. You can also create missions with the mission editor. This also applies for multiplayer missions, but the mission editor is quite a complex beast, quite capable, but complicated nonetheless. Basic things are not as simple to do as one would hope for. So yeah, if you want to dive into the mission editor, you're going to have to do some research on it. Now that we mentioned multiplayer, there are two very important things you must know. First of all, you need to understand very well how the IFF in your aircraft works. This is a friend or foe identification system. It is crucial that you are able to distinguish between a friendly or an enemy aircraft. Make sure not to shoot down friendlies. Accidents happen. Just be sure these are not frequent occurrences. Second of all, do know there are two versions of DCS. The stable version, this is the one you download by default, and the open beta one. This is the one it has the newest features, and the one the multiplayer community uses. So basically, if you want to fly multiplayer, or you just want the latest updates going on, your best bet would be to opt into the open beta version of the game. Again, if you are not sure how to do this, a simple Google search will solve this issue quite quickly. Now, another tip for those interested in flying multiplayer. The best place to start in multiplayer is the HOTAS training server. Accidents are more understandable here, and the server is set up in a way which makes it easy for you to test your developing skills. After getting the hang of things, it would be a good idea to move into the other HOTAS server, the real one, Georgia at War. This is great because it is a PvE server. This means you won't get your ass kicked as badly as a PvP server. More info regarding the HOTAS servers down in this video's description. After these multiplayer experiences, you should be ready to venture on your own. So, good luck and fly safe. Okay, some extra notes. Be sure to fully understand that air combat is made up by many very complex moving parts. To fully understand what is going on around you, you are going to have to amass great amounts of information regarding various different topics. This includes how air density affects you and the missiles flying around you, how radars work, what ordnance is available to you, what ordnance is available to your enemy, how to defeat every single possible threat, landing procedures, navigation beacons. The list just goes on and on and on, so don't beat yourself if you're having trouble understanding what the hell is going on. Everybody started as confused or even more than you will be. Just enjoy the ride and be ready to never stop learning. I will leave a link to a great video that helps you understand air-to-air combat in this video's description. Be sure to check it out. In aviation, you can literally never stop learning. If you enjoyed this video and you found it helpful, be sure to leave a like. If you want more stuff like this, be sure to subscribe. Happy flying! Cross check out.